the things that you just said, particularly about Trump and his appointment of Supreme Court justices, and we know Kavanaugh was accused of all kinds of sexual impropriety, assault, and all of this stuff.
Mhm.
And around that same time, ironically, the trend, or whatever you call it on Twitter, where something goes viral, there was a hashtag that said, Black men are trash. I have still to this day, Tommy, have never seen white women start a hashtag that said white men are trash after Kavanaugh, after Trump, after literally we could go on for hours naming the list of white men who have abused and exploited all of the, and to me, I feel like, yeah, Doc, somebody said Doc going in. And so to me, that is very telling of where some of our people are. I refuse to believe that all Black people, but where some of our people are, particularly the so-called educated in the academy, and people who have close proximity to whiteness, and particularly white liberals, and access to funding from white folks, that's where the mindset is. It's almost like, from my observation, that it pays. It literally pays to dehumanize Black men and boys.
Absolutely it does. One of the biggest, I'll tell you this from my experience, like one of the biggest determinants of social mobility in liberal arts fields, right? I don't know so much of the hard sciences, but in liberal arts fields, the biggest predictor of whether or not you mobilize when you do studies of race and gender is whether or not you hold negative opinions about Black men. There's not a single scholar that I could think of that writes positively about Black men in the liberal arts that's in a high position, a research one or Ivy League position. Not a single one. Now, they may say positive things in social media. They may say things, in conversation, but I don't know of any systematic scholarship that defends Black men as progressive, as caring, as vulnerable, etc. That's written by somebody in liberal arts. Now, you find epidemiologists, sociologists, people in education, right? You find those scholars there, but you're not going to find them in liberal arts, because overwhelmingly liberal arts disciplines define themselves by the pathologization of Black men. And I think that's a really important point.
How the fuck is that allowed? Like, how?
Because white people decide who's hired. A dean will give you a line. That's what I'm saying. Departments are like mini kingdoms. They're like mini fiefdoms, right? If the dean is not going to intervene in a department's hire of a person, so if everybody in the department is like a white feminist or a white liberal, and they believe that men have privilege and power, and they believe that they're racist, they believe Black men are dangerous, of course they're open to these ideas. I see this is the problem. The idea that Black men are dangerous and rapists and misogynists, etc., appeals to the most base sensibilities that white people have had about Black people who are not Black people and other non-white men since the 1800s. Like, this is literally why they colonized people. We need to go save the women. The women are bare-breasted. The women are living in shacks. They're not treated and valued as women. Let's go kill all the men. Let's make them our concubines. Like, this is how white people thought, right? So this idea of women's rights or gender that we keep inventing is always a positive thing is just not that. That's not to say that women should not have rights. I'm not saying anything crazy like that, even though liberals love to accuse me of that, right? Oh, somehow you're against women's rights. That's not the issue. But the issue is, just like everything else, capitalism, civil rights, etc., as an insidious racist history. And the insidious racist history is when you have people that already believe that non-white men are dangerous, be they Muslim, Arab, Black, Mexican, etc., you're going to enforce that racism through your gender politic, which is why you have programs that will not hire racialized men unless they prove to them that somehow they're safe. And this is an overwhelming problem in the academy, right? Black and brown men are two of the least represented groups in the academy generally. So there's an overwhelming fear that people have of these groups, of the men of these groups. So no dean's going to check your hiring committee if your faculty says we vote for X person because they're the best, and that's why you have the kinds of stuff coming out in the academy that you have. And the thing in liberal arts is liberal arts don't even require evidence. Like, liberal arts is all about interpretation and theory. So you can make something up, people believe it. It's the brand new theory. It could be empirically false, which is what my work demonstrates. Oh, I'm a bad person because I depend on white empiricism. So I have arguments with other Black scholars that will make claims about Black men are X, Y, and Z. I will go refute it based on the data or criminological studies or, you know, a CDC data set. How do you answer this? Oh, well, you're using empiricism. Empiricism is white supremacy. But I was like, but you're using Freud.
But your theory ain't white supremacy.
You're using subculture violence theory. Like, all this is white supremacy if you're getting down to it. But you have no problem doing that to demonize a certain segment of Black people. And I can't overstress that enough. The reward of Black scholarship around issues of race, right, has always been who demonizes a certain segment of the Black population. So if you're,
that's almost a requirement. It seems.
Right. Like, I don't view, and see, this is why it's so funny when you think about the kinds of arguments that people make against me. I don't pathologize any Black people because I don't think Black people are pathological. I don't think that the high rates of child abuse amongst Black women in our communities caused because of Black women. I think it's caused because of poverty, because of isolation, because of trauma. I don't think Black people or Black men that abuse their children are Black women do it because they're bad people or because they're men. I think it's because they're poor, unemployed, suffer recidivism trauma, right? I believe in that there are social determinants that influence behavior. Right. So there's nothing wrong with us because the populations, the demographics that this happened with are some of the most economically and politically deprived populations of our race in the United States. So when you ask that question, well, what's wrong with Black people? It's our condition. You can't put, it's the crab in the barrel thing. People's like, oh, they'll pull each other down. The crab's natural environment is not the barrel.
That's right.
You put them there. And then you look at the behavior that they demonstrate in the barrel as if that's their natural state.
That's a perfect analogy.
No other group of people, you don't look at people that suffer genocides like in Armenia or the Holocaust and say that what these people did in those environments are their natural personality. Right. You don't say that women who were bartering sex to stay alive, or men who were abusing women, or women who were having sex with Jewish boys on the runway, that's their natural environment. You understand that their people are dejected, they're oppressed, they're facing death, they're trying to escape in any way possible. And then sometimes that leads to violence and abuse of other people. But you will have Black scholars in the United States take as a position of their scholarship and their intellectual foundation that something's wrong with a certain member of their community. They don't say anything about white people, right? You're not saying anything about white people creating the kinds of structures, right, that have a literal hand. Like, you can materially see how white people and white policy have taken Black people, Black men out of households and communities. You don't talk about that, but you got to talk about these scary Black men who are psychoanalytically geared to think that they have the permission to commit violence. And then the evidence for that isn't any studies about Black men. It's just, well, Bell Hooks said it, right? So we have a real problem, right? Derek Bell was a lawyer. He was a law scholar. He worked on desegregation cases. He represented poor Black people and their interests. So his scholarship looks like he's representing and talking about from the perspective of Black people. The scholars that we're talking about today don't advocate for anybody. I advocate for Black people, Black men and boys who are victims of trauma. I work with this population. So my work reads as if I have a vested interest in decreasing violence in our communities. I went and got a public health degree because I am interested in decreasing violence in our communities. If you got a degree in English and you just feel like you want to blow up on social media, you don't have an investment that's materially invested or tied to the well-being of your community. And that's the problem. It's the disassociation that white liberals see as an opportunity to incentivize versus divest in Black scholars in the academy.
Or to leverage Black people and Blackness to some extent to further their own agenda around gender. And some people even argue the LGBTQ plus industrial complex as well, where you will leverage, Black folks. It seems to me, Black women in particular, to push or further their own sort of interest around that. Yeah. And Dr. Curry, this is a good time for us because I can't let you go without segue in talking about your experience in the American Academy, right? You and Dr. Gwinnetta Curry, Dr. Gwinnetta is Dr. Tommy's wife. Y'all are like family. Y'all family to us. And I remember when you were under vicious attack, when you were still in Texas, for being who you are, being the amazing scholar, and for centering Black folks and Black boys and men in particular, and talking about, I believe it was a video that you did with Rob Reddy. I still go back and listen to those videos. I love those videos. and you were talking about the brother out of North Carolina, Robert F. Williams,
Yes.
and this idea of defending ourselves, our right to defend ourselves. And there were some white supremacists, right-wing white supremacists, that got a hold of one of those videos, completely took it out of context, and that seemed to start the ball rolling, with how more people got to know who you are, but it also put your family, yourself and your family at jeopardy. Can you share a little bit of a synopsis of that time and how the lack of the support that you got from the president of the university at that time?
Oh, well, it's funny because, when I was little, my dad used to tell me this story about how when white people weren't happy with black people, or if white people wanted something black people had, they would come to their house with guns and take it, right?
Damn.
So my experience with guns was really about protecting what black people had, and
Right.
I thought about that because when that incident at Texas A&M happened, I thought, wow, this is. I mean, at the time I was like 36, 37. Almost 40 years later, black people have to have the same fear that if you say something that white people don't like, they can take your career, they can take your life, and you will have other white people who are allegedly are liberals sit by and co-sign on it, right?
Yep.
And I'll be very honest. Like, I had overwhelming support from black scholars, but there were a lot of black scholars who didn't want to support me because they thought that my focus on black men and the criticisms I've made about intersectionality or black feminism didn't warrant me being supported. And again, that's the irony to me that we can have my disagreements with intersectionality, black feminism, etc., are not ideological; they're material. How do you account for this other kind of violence? You
That's
say that
right.
domestic abuse happens primarily to women. The data suggests otherwise. How do you account for it? How do we explain it? These are intellectual interests. I don't have a political stake in black women not getting resources, or black children or black community not getting resources. At certain levels, a practical thing. If intersectionality actually worked and black people's lives would be improved, despite me voicing my agreement or disagreement, I would support it because it's improving black people's lives. But that's not what's happening. So the issue at Texas A&M was about the fact that I stated very plainly, and I'll state it again: black people should not be slaughtered as animals and dogs in America. Black
Right.
people have a right to life and liberty the same way that every American does, every American citizen does. And if white people feel that they have the God-given right to destroy, kill, maim, exploit, and abuse, right, terrorize black people, then black people have a Second Amendment right to defend themselves.
Right.
That's what I said. I concretely stand by that position. Now, that's not me saying that black people should pick up guns and go kill white people, but that is me saying that if white people
We
come
should
to black
defend
communities,
ourselves.
we should
Right.
defend ourselves. And I wholeheartedly stand by that comment. Now, what happened at Texas A&M was that about, I think I've mentioned this previously, about a week or two before, I had sent a document outlining systemic discrimination and racism
Mm-hmm.
at the university to the dean of faculties.
Mm-hmm.
A week later, not even a week later, I then get these emails suggesting that somehow this old video had resurfaced. I don't think those two things are unconnected, are disconnected. But what ended up happening was that you had the president of the university say that he thought my language was threatening, that it didn't represent core values, the typical white apologetic speech.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and as I told people then, nothing I said is outside of my research trajectory. It's not a controversial statement. It's not a slip of the tongue. And I think that the fact that so many white people were invested in the idea that black people should not have a Second Amendment right of self-defense tells you what the political orientation of people are.
Mm-hmm.
What that moment taught me was that as much as we celebrate black achievement and black success, we try to pigeonhole any black person, especially black men, right, that have a real disagreement with white liberal ideology or integrationism, etc., as radicals and illegitimate. So what ended up happening is that you had a whole bunch of white people, white scholars, white professors at university, suggest that despite being one of the most prolific black theorists I certainly think of my generation, that none of my scholarship mattered. The fact that I had just gotten promoted to full professor in 6 years, that didn't matter, right? The fact that they elevated this white racist blogger, Rod Dreher, uh, to a conversation based on a blog, a complete misreading of an academic article. he gets elevated as if he's a professional and a colleague, right?
Right.
These are all products and symptoms of the kinds of racism and dehumanization that Black people deal with in U.S. academies.
Right.
The only difference is that, unlike many other people, I didn't apologize, because
Right.
at the foundation, I don't think I did anything wrong. And I think that when we have that kind of position, this is what I meant about white consensus and white people deciding everything. If you have a position where white people get to tell you what you wrote means, I'm the author, and they get to tell me what it means and why they're offended by it and why that should determine my job. Black people's security, Black people's professionalism, Black people's economic careers and livelihoods are not protected.
Right.
And that's a position that I adamantly refuse. I refuse to put myself in a position where I have to respect the opinion that white people have about me, myself, and other Black folk more than what I think about that.
Right.